Hello and welcome everyone to the second interview that I have done with Mordhau lead developer Marko Gurgurovic. The beautiful one, all hail his holy, incredibly gorgeous grace. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with me yet again to talk about this incredible game. Mordhau, Marko.
Thank you for having me the second time, and yeah, let's do this.
Heck yes. Yeah, so we don't need pleasantries. We know each other. We're bros. Uh, I've gotten a very large list of questions from viewers from the last video and just over time, as well as from comp players from both Chivalry as well as other melee slasher games. And not every question that I've gotten is going to be asked or, for that matter, answered. However, I tried to get the best questions that I thought most people would want to hear the answers to, effectively, who are just getting into learning about this game or who have already been following this game. Just as a slight reminder, the Kickstarter for Mordhau, the game we're talking about, has 11 days left as of the posting of this video, which is going to be on the 27th of March, I believe. And that is to say, get over there, support this beautiful gem. The link's in the description. If you can't support it, there are going to be other ways, obviously, in the future and otherwise, but at the very least, the Kickstarter is going to be able to tell you so much more about this game than either of us will in just 20 or 30 minutes time. So check that out. And without further ado, Marko, let's get to some questions. So, first thing, in the gameplay trailer, because that's where a lot of these questions are going to be coming from, we saw a beautiful castle and a battle to go along with it. Now, is there going to be a game mode that is based around the idea of sieging a castle, as there is in a game like Warband, or is it going to be more like Shiv with objectives all around? Is that simply a map element? What's going on with that?
Essentially, neither. We're
Okay.
going with something closer to, say, Battlefield's Conquest mode. And that's sort of how there's obviously our own take on it, and there's going to be differences. We're still working some things out, but essentially, that's how you can probably imagine how vehicles would play into that as well, and horses and stuff like that. So that's kind of the idea of what we're looking at. We don't want to have one team just sitting in a castle and the other team attacking the castle, because that's potentially very boring for the team just sitting there, and very boring for the team just getting shot at and trying to get to the castle. So we're trying to get a sort of dynamic where these sides can change in a nice and dynamic way, so to speak.
Okay. I very much like that idea. For whatever reason, that description kind of reminds me a little bit of For Honor. Would it perhaps go... Obviously, I assume you're going for more asymmetrical gameplay if there's going to be a castle, unlike For Honor, where it's mostly symmetrical. But do you think there might be a parallel there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, For Honor is also a type of capture zone game mode, kind of like you could say Conquest. I mean, there's obvious parallels between the two, so obviously there will be parallels between what we're doing and that as well. So sure.
Okay, cool. I was just curious something that came up. So would you say that sort of conquest-like mode for region control, it seems like, in a map scale, would you consider that sort of the main mode of the game at the moment?
That would be the big mode, sort of the
Okay.
mode that we want to push to the general public at first. And that's also the mode that would be able to support 64 players, because that's,
Nice.
you're not going to cram last man standing into 64 players,
Oh no.
obviously. Although I'm sure someone will try that out with the mod tools. Um, but yeah, that's the idea.
All right, cool. There will be a segment on sort of competitive-oriented questions, and I'll sort of ask a corollary to what I was just asking when we get there. However, to move on a little bit from that, considering again the same sort of place in the gameplay trailer, we saw siege weapons, and we saw the siege weapon impact with some players, some characters, and just completely wreck them. However, what we didn't see was any kind of environmental destruction. Is that anything you guys are planning on a large scale?
On a large scale, no. There may be some parts of it that will be destroyable, that are like meaningful to maybe how the map plays out in terms of taking down a specific wall. But we're not doing overall destruction because of we're trying to optimize the game, and we're baking down lighting information into light maps. So It's essentially prohibitive for us in this sense because we want to keep the performance at its best. I'm not sure how things will evolve with things like mods, so possibly someone will just say, well, let's do this anyway and have a map like this. It's entirely possible, but we're not looking towards that right now.
Right. So yeah, for anyone wondering, this game is being developed with optimization as a huge priority. I believe you mentioned something like this last time, that you yourself develop on a relatively low to mid-end PC.
Yeah, it's a very old PC. Uh, but definitely, optimization for something like this is really important. Everyone knows how important high FPS is in a first person game, and whether you can get 60 or 120, but below that, it kind of doesn't feel right. So we are trying to push this as far as we can.
Right. And it's certainly a competitive disadvantage as well. And in a game like Shiv, that was absolutely felt quite heavily. All right, so there's that question. So no mass scale destructibility, perhaps something meaningful, and obviously if and when the mod tools are a thing that people can use, then they can play around with that. Awesome. A bit more of a macro idea in terms of sort of player versus player gameplay. There have been a lot of questions asked. How are things like dragging and like really close up engagements going to be happening? Obviously, you showed in the gameplay trailer reverses, or not in the gameplay trailer, but the Kickstarter trailer, reverses and just silly things like that are just not going to be a thing, and that's fantastic. But a lot of people are asking about, I guess, less ridiculous looking measures, but still measures that have the potential to, I suppose, look a little bit unrealistic, such as drags and such as maybe something some people might call face hugging. So how is that implemented in the game in its current state, I guess?
So drags, in terms of mouse manipulation in general, that's possible, but it doesn't really look the way people usually connect drags to these sort of anti-gravity stopping of the weapon mid-air and then suddenly hits you. It doesn't really look like that because of the way the animations are done, and that essentially changes how these things look. These are important mechanics nonetheless. They increase the skill ceiling, and we're not going to remove this entirely. We're going to make it look good. That's what we're doing with this game, really. There is no lock on. There is no, we're not preventing you from moving your mouse. Those are the tools that you have at your disposal, and it's important that you do. It's our job to make it look good. So for face hugging, there is a little bit more space between the player and the opponent. And the way we're doing that is there's also something called camera distance that you can slightly adjust. So it pushes you slightly further back your view so that you're not right up the enemy opponent, which also you could normally do with the field of view settings. But we're making that separate a little bit to help with this. And obviously, if someone's face hugging you, you just kick them, and that kind of,
Yeah.
as a meta game, that influences this aspect of face hugging in itself, which I think is a pretty good solution to this.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have thought quite a bit on these topics. So hopefully we can expect some very fleshed out and good looking animations, of course, and really nice combats, I guess, as a whole. I don't know if anyone noticed that while listening, but I liked a little jab at For Honor there. We don't have lock-ons. Nice, Marco. Uh, but I'm really glad you guys are thinking on these things. So yeah, guys, don't. I would legitimately not worry too much about, as me to the viewers, about the drags in this game, because as long as they look better than they did in Shiv, and as long as they are, something that people can, I guess, get the hang of as they were in Shiv, I think the implementation will be just fine. And it seems you guys are putting a lot of thought into the implementation of various aspects of the game, such as this. So, to move to a completely different topic, away somewhat from the melee aspect, we've been getting a lot of questions about throwable weapons. Obviously, a lot of weapons can be thrown, but what's the limit to that? Can I have a massive double axe and chuck that at somebody?
No, so right
Darn it.
now, sorry to
No,
burst
that's
your
good. Yeah.
bubble. So the idea with the thrown weapons is for one-handers that don't have an alternate mode of use. Like a warhammer, you can flip it around, but something like a sword in one hand, it doesn't have an alternate mode of use. So in that case, the button for the alternate mode of use just throws the weapon. That's what we're giving those types of weapons. Two-handers have various modes of use, and none of them are throwable. So that's
Okay.
that.
Okay, nice. Yeah, very very simple. As you just heard, guys. Anything that realistically wouldn't be thrown and that doesn't seem to have a secondary holding methodology, I guess. Now then I might ask. So I assume things like, let's say, a sword of war type weapon. Could I assume that can be wielded one-handed in addition to a shield? Maybe. I'm probably
Uh,
extrapolating a bit too much here, but
yeah, a bastard sword can be. You can change between a one-handed
okay.
and two-handed grip. So you can throw that. It's a bit bigger. I mean, it wouldn't really look that good when thrown. I guess it's.
Right, right.
So you do change grips on that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So keeping it realistic. Yeah, I don't see why anyone would ever throw a bastard sword. So I think that's perfectly sensible. Nice. So it seems like you're keeping everything in the realm of reality. That's good to know. What about things like spears and pole arms? I know we saw those shown off in the Kickstarter trailer, just kind of in a little bit of a vignette, given a massive sort of arsenal thing. A very specific question about those. How are those going to work in terms of the bits of them that can do damage? So I know in Shiv, you could hit somebody with just the point of the spear that you are carrying effectively and hurt them. Are you guys going to have a damage system with that where only the steel tip deals damage with weapons like that?
Right now, the whole weapon deals damage. It doesn't have a particular case for the wooden handle. Um, it's definitely something that would the player in first person would, I think, pretty much be impossible to tell if you're hitting with which part you're hitting because of the first person view and the distortion of distance. It's easy kind of to know that you're in range, but it's not so easy to know where exactly in range you are from that point of view. We could potentially try something like this as a way to balance these really long weapons. But it's something that's easy to try out in like an alpha, in the alpha builds when we're doing testing. But it's not really something we can reliably decide on ourselves without having this sort of tests. So it's something we will leave for later on when we're doing the tests.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, see how it's reacted to, how people use them. Certainly. To take it back to shields just for a moment, I was considering making shields a whole segment, but I thought that there's not that many questions to merit it, and shields are a pretty straightforward thing. You have it, you hold it up, it works. But I had a very simple question that I was hoping would encompass a lot of other questions. So, in the current state of the game, given that it's very pre-alpha, what would you say are the trade-offs between using a shield and simply parrying with a weapon?
A shield is better than simply parrying with a weapon right now. We are going to look at that, possibly make the shield hitbox kickable, to see if we need to sort of balance them. But the general idea is if you don't get a shield, you can get something else. So you can get like
Okay.
maybe something to throw at. You can get more armor or something that essentially the shield was taking space or points, so to speak.
Okay. Interesting. So it becomes a trade-off. That's good. So then I might say why use a shield over parrying? What would be the benefits?
Well, the benefits is you get to hold up the parry. The other benefit is obviously you can block projectiles much easier, and it protects you on your when it's on your back. That's pretty much it.
Okay. super cool. It does protect you while it's on your back. Very nice. Um, what about, because I know in the trailer we saw this, and I know this from the slasher prototype. When someone runs out of stamina, they will drop their weapon. Will a similar thing happen if they're holding up their shield?
Yeah, right now it does drop the shield. I don't
Okay.
know if we'll keep that or if we'll just go for a sort of stun, or if we will end up having shields that can maybe be broken, even though that's not realistic. But you know,
Yeah. So that was
something we would test definitely.
right. That was actually my next question. If from the sounds of it, I take it you guys are not planning on having shields have any kind of wear during a game.
Yeah, right now no. Right now no.
Okay, cool. So shields, nice. I think that's the right way to do things. Makes sense. It's certainly a bit more realistic. And let's go over to something a bit more basic. Health regen and stamina. Will something like, just a short question first, will something like sprinting drain stamina, just put simply?
No, absolutely not. It doesn't. It doesn't really. We use stamina as a way to influence the meta of the game.
Okay.
So if we want to say gently punish a player for constantly parrying, then we can use stamina for that. That means that it's not in your best interest to stay defensive. And that's a good way to influence the meta, so it's not overly defensive, but it rewards aggression. And that's what we're using stamina for. It's not just something we're going to slap on every action like sprinting or something like that. Definitely not. But sprinting does not regen stamina.
Of course. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a very good mindset, I think. I'm excited to see where that leads you guys in terms of design. And again, just a very general question, very different. However, I noticed in the gameplay trailer, in the very first engagement, the two teams had very distinct colors. And this led me to an assumption that I wanted to make sure of. So the team there will be a insert color here team and an insert color here team, I assume.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So they will be homogeneously colored in terms of team play, and then I imagine there's going to be a free-for-all mode where there's full customization.
Yeah, something like that. So you'll have essentially a palette of colors for each team that you can pick, and
Okay.
some items will probably not be restricted. So something like
Okay.
I don't know, fur with shoulders of fur or something like that. We wouldn't force you to color the fur a weird blue color or something.
Nice. Oh, okay. So I see what you're saying. So there won't be quote unquote team restricted items, but there will be items that are sort of cosmetically restricted. Like fur would never be purple.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We do have like you cannot pick just any color for any
Good.
items. If
Good.
something like fur, you get only fur colors. So we have a palette of
Cool.
fur colors. You
Oh,
can pick that.
nice.
If it's leather, you get a palette of leather colors. If it's metal, then you get a palette of metal colors.
Nice. That's very good to hear. That'll keep it realistic. And
And
I,
for just to clarify, obviously for those like metal colors, we're not gonna force those to be blue. That's what I mean.
oh God, please, yes, thank you, thank you. That would look so horrible. Have an MLG squad coming in here with blue and red swords. Please no. And while we're on the topic of cosmetics, a question that I wanted answered and to put a lot of people's fears to rest, perhaps, is the question of player character customization limitations. So I'm pretty sure you said this in the Kickstarter trailer and in another interview, but I wanted to reiterate here. There will be limitations on the cosmetic customization of your player character's face, body, etc., so that it doesn't impede on immersion, I assume.
Yeah, yeah. The body is essentially, the popular triangle of, fat, strong, slim, or something like that.
Yeah.
So you can't really go crazier there. I mean, it's
Sick.
limited. But for the face, we have limits in place that restrict like how much you can move the eyes left, right, if you can, how much you can move them separately, and so on. So that keeps the restrictions and the faces looking believable for the most part, and no weird, crazy, broken stuff.
It's good to hear. Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, as long as I can have a dude with like a crooked nose and some really crappy teeth, I'm perfectly fine. He can look normal otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I love it. I absolutely love that. You guys are keeping it real. That's awesome, while keeping it fun. While we're on the topic of sort of customization, I wanted to talk a little bit about something that was mentioned in our first interview, as well as just very briefly in the Kickstarter trailer, the idea of a perks or a proficiency system. I'm not sure exactly what you used to describe it. And sort of, first of all, maybe give a short description of that, and second of all, maybe an example of what that might entail.
Right. So the point of the proficiency system is we're not just throwing that in to make things more interesting. We're throwing that in so we have limitations on what kind of characters you can make. And we're trying to keep those limitations as lax as possible, but we don't want you to go, full longbow with full plate armor. That wouldn't be very good for the game itself.
Nice.
But yeah, so essentially you get some points that you get to distribute to these trees of proficiencies. And one example of this would be armor specialization or armor proficiency, where the lowest there's 4 tiers of armor. So one is naked or cloth, and then it's leather or gambeson, and then it's chainmail or scale mail, and then it's plate mail. So where you get like 3 points you can put into armor, and it will unlock the next tier, so you can start putting on plate armor. But it also makes the lower tiers lighter, so you move around faster in them.
Okay.
So someone that would get full plate like this wouldn't have points to get something like advanced range specialization, so they can get longbows and stuff like that. So this is how we limit it.
Okay. So just to clarify, so if I were to not put anything into the armor proficiency tree, would I then be unable to use certain types of armor?
Yeah, you'd be able to use unable to use most types of armor. You'd be able to
Okay.
go essentially cloth and
Just
run
cloth.
around
Okay.
naked.
Okay.
But
That's
but
super interesting.
that would give you points you could put into the range tree or some other trees.
Okay. And just to go slightly deeper, are there going to be just I guess what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to ask is, will these points that are allocated into specific trees, etc., will those be, I guess, predicated on a specific loadout out of a number of loadouts? So if I want to sometimes play as a really heavy armored heavy hitter, but other times I want to be an archer, are those perks, are those proficiencies connected to my account across the game, or simply to a single loadout?
No, to a single loadout. So everything
Nice.
is to a single loadout.
Nice. Okay, that's very, very good to hear. Yeah, that shows a lot of promise for just the customization that's possible. Awesome. So I was very curious about that. I'm glad to hear that's working out. To go to a bit more of a couple more specific things, also another sort of little bit more customization oriented question, but perhaps not. Will there be, I guess, utility items in the game? Things like, for example, Chivalry's smoke pot, things that don't have any, I guess, mechanical benefit, but act as a utility item?
Yeah, there are utility items. Things like
Nice.
smoke bots are in the game, and there's also
Oh,
like
cool.
fire bombs you can throw. And we're going to be adding more stuff of that sort.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super cool to hear. And will these be just like any other item that any player can just equip?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. All right. And while we're on the topic of just items in general, you mentioned in both the Kickstarter and also in the customization, the weapons dev blog a long time ago, that I believe that weapon customizations can be purchased in using, I guess, in-game currency, I think. Is that still what's planned?
Yeah, but the in-game currency, this has a lot of negative connotations,
Yeah.
but it's not meant as some like real world money that you can then buy the currency with and then unlock stuff. It's just how we do progression in the game, because it's mercenary themed.
Yeah.
So using coins for something like this is pretty cool and thematic, and that's essentially what we're doing. In other words, you could call it experience or something like that. But yeah, you unlock it with this, so you have some choice as to what kind of items you want to unlock first. We want to give that to the player, and not, in case you want to use a longbow, you've got to unlock a series of daggers for no reason. So,
Right. Yeah. That's super super cool. So you can customize your progression, which is really nice. And yeah, it's good that you reiterated, because I know some people were having that qualm, that imaginary qualm, that you guys would be supporting microtransactions with game elements, and it's not true, guys. Not with this. Yeah, doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I like your implementation. And I think we can go into a bit more specific questions now. Specifically, something that a lot of people have been having questions on, especially competitive players, are archery. So first and foremost, in the very first dev blog, I think, going over combat, projectile blocking was advertised. And I've been getting questions as to basically how easy is that going to be to do? Is any old guy just going to be able to notice an archer and constantly parry in his direction? How precise do they need to be?
To be honest, we simply don't know at this point
Hmm.
because no one's played the game yet.
Right.
But right now, the way it works is you have the parry window, which is in Mordhau, it's 400 milliseconds. That's how
Okay.
long your parry lasts. And if it connects with a projectile during that time, it will block. Um, the other option is that you use the attack itself to like clash with the projectile and knock it to the side.
Okay.
That's much harder. That's very, very hard to do. Or like planning to do that, I don't think that's going to be possible, to say the least,
I
because
mean,
you have to time the wind up, then the release, and somehow you have to hit it.
God, that's
But
gonna be
I
cool.
imagine when that would happen during gameplay, it'd be a cool moment, a really cool moment.
So epic.
Like we had some fight during the when we were filming stuff, and someone would throw the axe like at the very moment it started flying towards the guy with the sword. He chops off his head and then deflects the axe with the same attack before it hits him, which is really amazing.
That's
uh,
epic.
and then there's the weird case where two arrows just collide and bounce off. I
Oh
don't know how
yeah.
likely that's going to be, or
Holy
throwing your
crap.
sword at the arrow.
I feel like, I mean, that's a hilarious idea that I need to run by Frosty, chucking a sword and an arrow. But that is actually a really interesting idea in terms of how that might play out in the meta, the idea that arrows can collide. If two archers are fighting each other and they both are stationary when they fire, that might create a really interesting, depending on how precise the hitboxes are, could create a really interesting stalemate
Yeah,
situation.
but it's very difficult to hit those two
Yeah,
arrows. I mean,
that
they're
makes sense.
small. They're quite small, so
Okay.
yeah.
It's good to know. Yeah. So the super precise hitboxes, which is really good to
Yeah,
hear.
I think it's more one of those like oh cool moments
Yeah.
when you're just not expecting that at all and
Yeah.
it happens.
Yeah, it's not the norm, certainly. Awesome. Uh, how about, so you already talked a little bit about this, given that the proficiency system is meant to keep people from being like, hey, I want to use a great bow and plate mail. So I'm going with the assumption then that something like that is impossible, or is it just really hard to do?
Plate mail with dedicated ranged weapons is not possible. We don't want
Okay.
that in the game because it with archery we try to keep it relatively like low hit to kill between archers so
Mm.
they can have fun duels, because for archers it's really important that they can quickly kill each other, and when they just spend hours shooting at each other from behind a rock, it's kind of not what we want to do.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense in both real terms and fun terms. How about something like, so they're wearing a gambeson, but and they've got a bow and arrow. Can they also have a weapon like a Zweihander, a two-hander?
We're still tweaking the exact numbers, so
Mm-hmm.
that'll come down to that. There's also several different types of, well, there's three tiers of dedicated ranged weapons.
Hmm.
So right now, the first one is like a short bow, a composite bow type thing,
Okay.
which is a weak, low draw weight bow. Um, then it's a crossbow, and the last one is a longbow. So if you go with something like a short bow, depending on how much armor you put on and stuff like that, it might be possible to get a big weapon.
Okay. Okay, cool. So they might be able to get it and make it work. Nice. Depending how you guys balance it leading up to the alpha, of course, and after. And actually, now that I've got you talking about these three base ranged weapon types, will they be like the melee weapons in that parts of them can be customized?
In theory, yes. Right now, no. So
Okay.
right now, you can't swap out like different parts of, like, say, the crossbow or something like that. We didn't have that planned. It's possible that we'll change that, but you can, however, color them like different parts. Maybe the bowstring has a little bead attached to it or something. I don't know, like a piece of cloth on the handle, so that you can color, or the wood, for example, itself. But you can't build it out of parts right now.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. But would that possibly be planned for release a year from now? Fully customizable ranged weapons?
We don't know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it will also depend on how the artists can envision this type of thing. With weapons, it's easy. With bows, I'm not so sure. I mean, they come part. Like, one thing we could do is maybe the string and the entire bow, but that's kind of limited. So I'm not sure what we'll do there yet.
Okay.
But it could be cool.
Yeah, there's plenty of room to work, of course. And this question is going to lead into our next segment, but I have to ask it first. So many people are curious. Horse archery, is it going to be a thing?
We don't know yet.
Okay,
Essentially,
cool.
we're looking at it, but we're not sure. It's not a technical thing. It's more of a gameplay thing. Like, do we want? Because those guys are annoying. Believe me, they just run away from you and they keep shooting at you.
Right.
So, well, at least we can limit them so they don't, turn 180 degrees.
Yeah, I imagine it'll definitely take some testing, and the alpha will probably have a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
Nice. So, as I said, we're going to be moving into our horses segment, my favorite segment. Rubbing my hands together. So this is something that me and Frosty got answered a little while ago, but I think everyone needs to hear. How are horses going to be acquired in the course of a match?
They spawn like vehicles in a game like Battlefield. So they're just sitting around on a map. They usually are going to have a lance sitting next to them as well, which you can pick up. Now, the lance itself, you cannot holster. That's a big object.
Yeah.
So if you want to drop the lance or change your weapon, it'll just fall to the ground. You don't spawn with a lance. You pick it up, you can climb onto the horse. The horse can either come with armor or be unarmored, have different properties depending on that. Either it's slower and more sturdier, or it's faster, but dies quicker. And that's essentially it. Then you just go and start annoying people.
Nice. Speaking of the lance, can it be reliably parried, given such a massive weapon?
Right now, we're still sort of undecided on that. We could also make it like, so when it's parried, it could disarm you or something like that. But also the lance, the way it works is it enters that couching stance, which doesn't really have. Well, it has a super long duration. If you could call it a release, for example, it's active essentially like a weapon, and it can hurt you. And there's no period where it will, not hurt you. So you can effectively, I suppose you could say, drag it in that sense, in the sense that you can avoid the guy who's trying to parry you and then come back and poke him.
Okay.
And there's some crazy stuff like lancing someone while jumping. I'm
Oh
not sure how.
God.
It actually looks fantastic, so I'm not sure
Okay.
what will happen there.
I mean, hey, if it looks good, then that. Well, that sounds really really good. That you guys are still considering those elements. Next question is kind of twofold to do with horses. So first of all, will the horses themselves, whether they have a rider or not? First of all, just a quick question: Can a horse move of its own accord?
It can, but it doesn't do that right now unless
Okay.
the rider dies. So
Okay.
in that case, it'll just sort of run away a little bit and then stop.
Nice. Okay. So then I will ask, will the horse, rider or riderless, be able to do damage on their own? Will they be able to stun people if they make contact?
Yeah, the horse, whether it has a rider or not, it can bump into players if it's going at a certain sort of gear of speed.
Hmm.
It has several levels of speed, and at a certain fast enough speed, it will push people to the side and slightly slow down when it does so. So you can. It does a little bit of damage as well,
Hmm.
and so yeah, when it's going fast enough, it'll do that. When it's slow, it'll just run into something
Meander.
and
Gotcha.
and stop.
Okay. Yeah, and that partially answers the next question. Like, I assume when you hit something or someone, the horse is going to slow. Realistically, like, how many people am I going to be able to run over before I just stop?
No idea right now. It's just
Okay.
something something we tweak and
Needs testing, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, certainly. All right. Well, I am suitably satisfied with your horses for the moment, obviously. And just now, a couple of competitive questions for those of a more pro bend and for anyone else. For competitive matchmaking, because I know that's something you guys want to focus on quite a bit. I know you guys want to flesh out the matchmaking. What what's going to be the differences, the functional differences between that and let's just say either normal matchmaking or just your average server?
Yeah, well, first we're focusing on the average server type of
Hmm.
matchmaking where there's not really a lot of focus on ranking and competitive aspects, and the servers are big, of course.
Hmm.
Um, but for competitive matchmaking, what are we're planning for, and I hope we can get this done as soon as possible. But I think we might be looking post release
Hmm.
or maybe on release. We'll see. Hint, hint. It's one of our stretch goals. Um,
Oh boy.
yeah, it's the next one. I'm going to mention that
Oh
anyway. But
boy.
it's this one is closing in, which are mod tools.
Yes.
But what we want to do first is 1v1s, 2v2s, sort of 3v3s, that kind of scope,
Okay.
because that's something we can reliably fill with the amount of people we have.
Hmm.
Something that we can make sure the queues are sufficiently low, and something that's also really fun. So you kind of queue for a 1v1 and you get put into a server with someone, and you get elo ranking, and you
Ooh.
have these divisions and you climb them and possibly unlock special stuff with that as well. uh, and 2v2s and 3v3s are kind of similar. It's essentially last team standing in that
Okay.
format. uh, Obviously people can get together, get a 5v5 going and get a scrim like in the good old days. And I don't know, I think we will try to branch into that as well, but we'll see how the player base goes with that, because 5v5 requires quite a lot of people. If you want to support different continents and different divisions, it's quite a lot of players
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you ended up answering just about every one of my competitive questions. It sounds like you guys are absolutely thinking of divisions and elo for your ranking system, and the competitive mode, at least near the beginning, is going. Sounds like it's going to be 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, just simple LTS style play. Uh, and obviously, it's very much in development and in design phase. So that sounds very good, though. What you've got so far, I think it sounds very practical. And I guess just to finish things off, I'll be asking just a few more very simple questions, just to kind of sate the thirst of many viewers and commenters. Uh, will there be anything like customizable emblems, either in the vein of, let's say, a Call of Duty game where you can just straight up chuck anything you want there, or maybe a little simpler like Shiv, where you put a couple pre-drawn logos and stuff?
You can't make your own emblems right
Hmm.
now. Well, I guess you can submit them with the Kickstarter because we're letting players submit it there.
Do it.
Uh, but we're not doing the kind of Call of
Hmm.
Duty style. But yeah, emblems you can put on. You can pick them per loadout. So
Okay.
it's one emblem per loadout, and then it appears on your, like your skirt or your shield, and stuff like that.
Nice. Okay. Cool. Uh, doot doot doot. Let's talk just very very briefly. I made a comment in my discussion with Frosty where we were talking about sort of long-term thoughts about Mordhau's sort of longevity, and we got into a discussion of cosmetic microtransactions, and I hate that word, but in a game like CS:GO or Dota, they can help a game live for so much longer. And I just wanted to briefly hear your thoughts on that, on a system where maybe if the content is really nice, if it keeps immersion, maybe people can sell different bits of armor, blah blah blah. What are your thoughts?
So in terms of outsiders selling that, well, first of all, in terms of longevity for the game,
Mm-hmm.
we want to work on that with free content updates and expand the player base. First of all,
Yeah.
if there's people we can still reach, then that's our focus before we start sort of trying to put any kind of cosmetics or microtransactions into the game. And if it does come to that point where we need additional funds to keep working on the game instead of doing a sequel or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, then definitely something we would discuss with the players and try to see what kind of options would work
Mm-hmm.
um, for everyone involved, what the players would like, and what we can do. And as far as other players submitting customization, that's a possibility as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it does require quite a bit of curating because we're not willing to accept just anything. We have a
Mm-hmm.
certain artistic vision and a certain basis in reality, and we don't really want any kind of plastic swords in the game, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely understand. Yeah, it seems like you guys are working with a very, very good, practical, realistic philosophy right now, and I can absolutely respect that. To move on to more basic stuff, how fast, roughly, like in a game like this conquest mode that seems to be your guys' main focus, how fast would respawn times be roughly?
Essentially subject to tweaking at this
Yeah,
point.
of
It's
course. That makes perfect sense. I assume at the end of it, it's going to be competitive and fun and all that good stuff. And obviously, we'll only know that after the alpha or during. Boop a doop. All right, little bit more happenstance questions. Will heads be able to explode, or do they just come off?
right now they just come off, or the throat is slit, so they partially come off.
Yeah.
We still want to do something for blunt weapons,
Hmm.
but explosions are a bit over the top even for us. We're
Yeah.
trying to find something that would work well,
Hmm.
that would fit. I'm not sure what we'll do there yet.
Okay. Yeah. Seems like something you guys would want to definitely consider. And how about screwing your pommel back on your sword or whatever weapon you've taken it off of and chucked at someone? Is that in the game?
Nah, once it's gone, it's
It's
gone.
gone. Okay, not yeah.
Save,
Any
save your pommels.
yeah for a rainy day. Yeah, you anybody got time to dig around in the sand to get their pommel back? That makes perfect sense. Um, let's see. Oh yeah. So tiny little question before we get to our closers. When the horse dies, because I know we saw this in a GIF on in a Kickstarter update. When a horse dies, how does that work for the player? What happens to the player?
The player falls off of the horse,
Straight up
but
falls. Yeah.
yeah, right now he just kind of floats off the horse because we don't have an animation yet.
Right.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
That's why you don't see it anywhere. So yeah, if the player dies on the horse, he kind of ragdolls and falls off the horse, and that's all good and fine. But when he's still alive, we're trying to find a good way to do this. It will probably end up with him falling to the ground and then getting up with a slight, so it's a slight lockout there.
All right. Nice. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely. And I do believe that is just about it for most of my questions. Just a couple closing questions. First and foremost, Merox, are you single?
Yes.
Ready to mingle?
Yes.
Well, guys, you heard it here first. It's too bad because I get first dibs. Suck it. So, well, it's very good to hear. Yeah, many people were asking that question. Is there going to be, but more of a serious question, is there going to be any possibility that after the Kickstarter is over, and potentially for those people who maybe weren't able to participate because Kickstarter doesn't accept PayPal, any way that they can support the game after the Kickstarter, financially or otherwise?
Yeah, there's definitely with PayPal and stuff like that.
Mm.
We're looking into it. We're going to try and do something after the Kickstarter, like most Kickstarters do.
Yeah.
A type of opening a web shop of sorts. But I can't promise anything yet. So if you can back the Kickstarter, try to get on that. If not, I hope we can sort this out and have something for everyone later on as well.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, you any of you guys who are not able to support the Kickstarter as a result of just using PayPal for your online transactions, bam, there you have it. And finally, just for the future, can we look forward to any more of them dev blogs?
Yeah, we're going to release gameplay footage really soon.
Oh, yes.
We got held back by technical difficulties, which were essentially us upgrading the engine midway, which was a really bad idea. And then we had to fix a bunch of stuff. And one of the things that was broken were death cams, and we weren't willing to release without those because we knew everyone would be like, "What did you do to the death cams? You took them out?" No, so we fixed that, and we fixed some lighting issues, and now we're going to get that out. I think in the next day or two. I hope. I'm not sure when this is going live, so.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I'm all about that gameplay footage. So, that about does it for my questions. Thank you very much, Marco, Merox, and anyone watching who wants to look deeper into this game, as deep as this 50-minute interview was. Dear God, check out the description for some links. Check out that Kickstarter. Give your support. I believe you guys have a greenlight page up for the game.
Yeah, the game was greenlit, actually. So.
Oh, sick. Okay. I mean, people can still show their support on the page, yes?
I have no idea.
I have no idea either. I'll link it anyway. Bam. But it's greenlit, so it's going to be on Steam. Woo. Yeah. So that's awesome. Check out the website, of course, the forums. There's loads of information on the forums that people have been telling me, like, yo, this question was answered in the forums. And I'm like, I didn't know that. And so check those out. There's plenty of resources all over the place. And go do it. Check it out. It's incredible, this effort, everything about it. Marco, thank you again very, very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Always. I assume that we will be having at least one more of these before the game releases in finality. And
yeah.
It'll be a glorious occasion. Maybe it won't be 50 minutes that time. Who knows? As always, guys, have a grand day. I shall see you guys next time. And just the hype. Let the hype flow through you. Later.